Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Always a delight to have Dr. Joel Klein in the studio with us today. He's with Ventana Wellness. And by the way, if you want to ask any questions, you're welcome to join us. The phone number is 541-776-5368. Or if you're outside the immediate listening and viewing area of the Dove, you can call us toll-free, 800-373-5368. Ask the doc. And here he is, Dr. Klein. How you doing, bud?
Good. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you. Good to see you. Cancer screening. Why did you pick this?
Well, because I think people need to be educated that it's not what it's been cracked up to be. There are some questions about issues. Particularly, the ones I wanted to address today are prostate and breast cancer screening.
Okay.
And that, assumptions that we've been making actually for the past 150 years about the way cancer spreads. It was thought in the beginning and has been thought, and some cancers still work this way, that it grows to a certain size before it starts to spread, because it has to grow gradually in the same place till it breaks through a blood vessel or a lymph vessel and then starts to spread through the body. And it turns out that that assumption is not necessarily true, and with that it really calls into question the results that we're getting with cancer screening.
Whoa. All right, so what is cancer screening?
So we're talking, the things I want to talk about big today, mammography, and routine testing of the PSA, the prostate-specific antigen for prostate cancer. So again, the whole notion would be, if it takes a while for a tumor to grow to a certain size before it spreads, the whole notion was, wow, if we can catch it before it breaks through, we can prevent it spreading. Okay. And it turns out that it depends on the tumor. And what we're learning about certain tumors are certain genetic mutations in tumors that make them particularly bad actors. And if you have a tumor with that genetic mutation, then what's happening, I think particularly in prostate and breast, is that by the time it even shows up on the screening exams, it's already broken out. It's an aggressive tumor that has already started to spread, so that the screening exams, and this is what we're seeing when you really analyze the data on how well we're doing with these cancers, are not what they've been cracked up to be for all this time. And unfortunately, I know I'm always the fly in the ointment, because I feel like I'm the only one getting this information out. Most of what people are hearing is coming from agencies and people who are promoting. They're not hearing the other side, and I feel obligated to let people know it's not quite that cut and dried of, oh, you get the screening test, it tells you if they have cancer, and you get it, and and they cure it early. It turns out that's not the case when we really look at the information. This
is a big topic, because I think you and I have talked off air and elsewhere that I just feel cancer is epidemic, but we're afraid to call it that.
Right. Although some people are, but yes, sure it is. It's a second leading cause of death in the United States.
It's epidemic, and we're not
estimated to be the first will overtake heart disease, I think, in time.
And I guess it's impossible to say how many types of cancers. There's just multiple.
As many different types of tissues there are in the body, because cancer is multiple different things. Well, any tissue, can have a different cancer and have different qualities based on what organ, what tissue that cancer came from.
Because you have to ask yourself, where was cancer 50 years ago?
Well, this is interesting, because I'll tell you about where it was 100, maybe 150 years ago. From what we know in Victorian England, and this is not from bad data, what we've learned is that this was the heyday of anatomical pathology, when doctors were doing 2 to 3 autopsies a week. That cancer was relatively rare as a cause of death, maybe 10%. And they thought that maybe that group of cancers were the genetic cancers. What we're really learning of all this gene work that's been done in cancer and the genetics, these cancer genes that they're describing, like people may be familiar with the BRCA gene that has to do with breast and ovarian cancer, or there's one that was discovered for colon, account for at most 10% of those cancers. So somebody said, well, it's not in my family. Okay, well, that gets rid of the 10%, but 90% of people with that cancer don't have a genetic issue for it. Now, what is that due to? Well, all kinds of factors. Our diet and our environmental exposures are probably the main factors in that.
All right, so what I hear you saying, Joel, is that the screening works, but it may be too late to prevent.
Well, the whole point
is that right?
Well, yeah. Well, the whole point is we want to prevent death from cancer.
Right.
By getting it, theoretically catching it early, we can prevent it from getting when it's been more advanced. It turns out for the best success in this area has been cervical cancer with pap smears. That is an unqualified success, undoubtedly. Colon cancer probably does adhere to that old model where it grows to a certain size before it breaks through. So colon cancer is one, so far it looks like, that if we can prevent it. The problem has been the screening tests. Not everybody can get a colonoscopy. But with prostate cancer, number one, most men will die with it if they have it, not from it. And the question is, who are these men, and if they tend to be younger, who have an aggressive tumor that is going to break out and kill them? And by the time it shows up, even if you have one of those tumors, the PSA probably a lot of the time may not pick it up in time. So what has happened is that the United States Preventative Services Task Force, which is an independent board of preventive medicine specialists, these are not cancer specialists, these are preventative medicine specialists, recently came out against routine prostate cancer screening in asymptomatics. So you come in, you're here for a physical, and we just routinely do the test. Because it really hasn't worked in decreasing deaths that much. And so what has happened was, with all the treatment, what they say, for every life you save, you will make 30 or 40 men impotent or incontinent or have permanent side effects from the cancer treatment. Whether it's prostatectomy, radiation. Now they're doing a better job with these, radioactive seeds that they put in, localizing the radiation, but there's still long-term complications from the treatment, and we're not making that huge of a difference in it. So for years they said there was actually evidence that you shouldn't do it. They finally came out and said, we do not recommend this as a routine part of health screening. And of course that's quite controversial.
All right. Because the next obvious question, and I don't want to answer it right yet, what's the alternative? But come back to prostate screening. So you're saying, does PSA go up and down? I mean, just naturally?
It tends to increase with age over time. So, of course, as men get prostate enlargement, we can talk about what causes prostate enlargement, which has to do with our friend inflammation, hormonal issues, some of these other metabolism issues that have to do with diet. But as you get prostate enlargement, yes, the PSA will naturally go up. It can go up and down in infection and inflammation.
Because I know some men who had a high PSA. Right. They panicked, went through they actually had it removed, and they lived to regret it. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, can't you see if it's going to stay up or come back down before?
Well, it's not a question of what the number is. It's what does the number signify? The question is, do you have cancer?
Yeah.
So I would assume that these gentlemen had cancer, but the question is, there are grades of cancer. And without getting too technical, they can actually, when they do the biopsies, they can look at the cells and see to some degree how aggressive the tumor is, or something called a Gleason score. And now with a lot of them with this Gleason score, let's say it's 6, found that doing nothing does the same as doing something.
All right, so in the meantime, breast cancer, women can go and have the x-ray done, the mammogram done.
Right.
You might find a lump, and you're saying if it's that size, it's already a problem.
No, if you have a tumor that's got a bad mutation in it, it maybe is already broken out.
Okay.
Here's the issue with mammography. When they really looked at it dispassionately, the few people who've been successful in doing this, because it's a political issue as well as others, it's probably only really benefiting women in their 60s. They came out years ago saying they didn't think we should do it with women in their 40s because you have a lot of false positives in women who are prior to menopause because the breast tissue is denser. So you wind up with a lot of biopsies and a lot of things, and people are supposed to feel better because, it turned out you didn't have cancer. Well, if we weren't doing all of this, it never would have come up in the first place. So women in their 40s, it's more difficult. Of course, those are the ones, if they do get cancer, it's a more aggressive tumor. That's a problem. We don't have great screening. for these things at this point. And again, those more aggressive tumors may have already started to break out by the time you even see them on exams. The thing, one argument with the mammography issue is that if it were really doing what we thought it was supposed to do, we should be seeing less cases of advanced disease because we're catching them early. We're not. We're not seeing less cases of advanced cancer. We're seeing improvement in survival that most experts feel is likely due to improvements in the treatment. But the screening has not really been what has made the difference in that.
All right, before we take a break, does blood tests show cancer?
No. Okay. Very rarely. Blood tests will show, there are markers that we use for tumors, but they're not felt to be, except for the PSA. Right. But even then, all these things are markers, and then you have to look at, all right, what does this marker mean? And no other really blood tests other than the PSA that has been used are felt to be good enough where you can indicate. There's something that's very popular out there, I forget what it is, but it's an alternative test that people will get, and then it's like, oh, it's positive, well now what do we do? Somewhere in your body there might be cancer, and we can't put you in a whole body MRI and do surgery because this one blood test was positive. So what do you do with that? So that's a tricky issue.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Dr. Joel Klein's with us, and I'm going to have him give the alternative to what he's talking about here. And if you want to join us, the phone number is 541-776-5368 or toll free 800-373-5368. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back with Dr. Joel Klein today here from Ventana Wellness. And by the way, it's ventanawellness.com, and it's an incredible resource for you on a lot of issues. Dr. Klein is the leading physician there, and you got all kinds of specialties, don't you?
Yeah,
dermatology
and pain, and especially you do have a great chronic pain clinic, Dr.
And he does the
Osborne.
prolotherapy thing there?
He does prolotherapy with this newer thing called PRP, platelet-rich plasma, for chronic pain, musculoskeletal issues, yeah.
Not to mention the fact that well known for hormonal balances and things like that.
Right,
with
that's
Jackson.
kind of a forte.
All right, so Dr. Joel Klein, Ventana Wellness. If you don't have a good physician, there's one right there. All right, we're talking about cancer screening, and you're basically saying, okay, it does detect, it's not that reliable, so what's the alternative?
Well, I'm saying understand the limitations. Well, there isn't a good alternative right now. Early detection is, for most illnesses, for most cancers, is not a great option. It's one we have. I want people to understand the limitations of it, that it's not a be-all and end-all. In fact, I remember this was, in the late 90s, because I was having this discussion with a patient, and he thought I was crazy. And he went online, and he came back, and I was amazed. He even found a urology website in Chicago, and they even said on the website, if your interest is in finding and treating prostate cancer, period, get the test. If your interest is in preserving quality of life, don't get the test. Most people I know would rather, if they're going to live shorter, better, rather than live longer and be miserable, but that's an individual decision. But that was even a urology website. Wow. So the bottom line still comes down to, obviously it's a huge problem, and what we talk about, diet, stress, environmental toxins. We really need to look at what's happening with our environment, with our water, with our air, certainly our diets. They think that the Victorian English that I was talking about earlier didn't get as much cancer because they ate all of this produce. They ate way more than we did because they were much more active. You didn't turn on a light switch, you stoked the fire. They were doing more, they were burning more calories, but most of those calories were people who could afford it. Obviously, the poor were living in their sewage and they were dying early of communicable diseases and whatever, but those who could afford it were living longer. In fact, the data is that they lived as long or longer than we do now. Wow. It is a fallacy that human beings have never lived as long. In the late 1800s, they were, if you lived past the age of 5. Now, there was huge infant mortality, but if you made it past that. So it's diet, lifestyle issues. Understand these screening tests are somewhat useful, but not a fallback. Well, I'll just, I'll treat my body the way I want, and then I'll just get these tests to see if they can get the cancer early, which is clearly a game of Russian roulette.
All right, so there for a while, and it may still be, that there was this trend to have a full body MRI just to see where you are. Does that do anything?
No. No. What are we going to do with that? And send people to surgery? No. Number one, prohibitively expensive. Number two, if somebody wants to pay for it, and then, we find something, and then you go through the whole medical workup, and you do this and that, and what do you find? Even that's not going to detect microscopic issues. Our whole thing of screening, I was just reading in the New York Times yesterday, had to do with this columnist's daughter's pregnancy, which was a lot different than hers. Says they're now treating it like a 9-month illness that ends in birth. I mean, she was screened up and down, and all of these false scares. Oh, well, the babies might have short bone syndrome from ultrasound, or it's not growing enough, this and that. And there's only going to be 5 pounds, so they wound up and it was breech. So they did a 2-week early cesarean section. Baby weighed 6 pounds, absolutely nothing wrong with it, but had all of this medical testing done. And what's being accomplished? Are those things really making a difference? You have to look at what is going to be done with the results. You don't just do a test to do it. What are you going to do with the answers if they're positive? And I think we're over medicalizing because, quite frankly, yes, there's a feeling of, we're doing something, but there's also a financial incentive to all these tests. Somebody made money out of all those ultrasounds and all those tests, so there's a financial incentive to doing more, and we feel better that we're doing more. But the whole question I want to raise is, are we really accomplishing something? And that's what always has to be asked.
You're saying no.
I'm saying sometimes no. I'm not saying always no, no, but I'm saying the information is not as cut and dried in many areas as it has been, and you really need to start, asking questions. What's being accomplished, and what are we going to do with that information?
Joe, I know as a physician, you obviously see it more than I do, but there are those where you catch it early, it's treated, and you beat it.
Right.
I've had very close friends that were basically stage 4, which is, I guess...
That's widely metastatic.
Okay. Beat it.
Yeah.
Okay. But then there are those who all of a sudden, no feeling, no indication, no nothing that they got it. And when they finally have a problem, maybe pain or something, they look in there, they're just full of it. Mm-hmm. There's something about cancer that's mysterious. Very
much so. In fact, a nutritionist, a very well-known and good nutritionist that I knew, died at 49 of metastatic colon cancer that showed up in just that way.
Okay. A lot of treatments for cancer. You have radiation, you have chemotherapy, you have surgery.
That's pretty much what you have in medical therapy. Right.
Okay. Pro-antibiotics or probiotics, are they being used?
Not that much. By that time, probiotics can be helpful, but I think that's putting out a house fire with a squirt gun. Okay. You really need, once you're dealing with cancer, you need an integrative approach, and some people are really looking into this. There's a clinic in Ashland, the Mederi Center. Donnie Yance there has been doing great work for years that's finally being studied on integrative approach to cancer patients. Choosing the chemotherapy based on the genetic mutation driving the tumor, not just where the tumor is coming from, using exhaustive herbal regimens that he's found, and there's research that shows the herbs actually help keep the tumor sensitive longer to the chemo. So there is a right way to be doing this. They're in the process of actually doing a study with it, but the chief of oncology at Johns Hopkins was so impressed with his results, he invited him to speak at Hopkins. So it's getting some attention.
Okay. All right, let me see if I can squeeze this in. If we can get Frank, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Your thoughts?
Dr. Klein, I have BPH, and my PSA has usually been 1 or 1.5. Went to the urologist, found that I have a nodule, and he wants to biopsy it right away. And I'm concerned about that because what I've seen with biopsies, with needle tracking and sepsis and infection, I'm concerned and afraid to get the biopsy, you know. And if I did have cancer, I don't know if I'd even want to get treatment for it with all the problems I've seen. They all come with their own specific problems, but incontinence and things like that. So I'm in a quandary as to what to do.
Well, you raise all the important issues, and I don't know enough to give you advice, obviously, in this direction. That's exactly it. There are complications to the biopsy. What are you going to do with that information if it is cancer? And can we guarantee it's not? No. With a lower PSA, it's less likely, but that doesn't guarantee anything. And the question is, you know, I don't know, I need to know more about you in terms of age and these other things where, you know, older men are going to have indolent tumors. Younger men, you know, it may not be a problem. And that's the whole point, is that what you really have to look at, and may get some opinions even from some alternative people who are skilled at cancer treatment, like these folks in Ashland would be the ones that I would recommend, to see, you know, what should be done about it, because there's all kinds of information that needs to be put together rather than a leap towards, biopsy treatment and the like.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
What about just a good old cleansing? Because, you know, the other thing is, you hear people that go through so much chemo, they're so, their immune system is so beat up at the end.
Right. And their gastrointestinal tract. I had a new patient last week just with that, with, you know, still probably years, you know, a little while after the chemo, and we have to rehabilitate the GI tract from all of that. Right. So it's done the right way. I am not a trained naturopath. I have a lot that I do with that. There's a right way to do these things. Usually in that kind of situation, you don't want to do aggressive detoxes at first. You want to help repair and build up the body, because detox takes energy. And if you try to detox somebody who's already depleted, you're actually a lot of times make them sicker and give them the detox crisis that some people say is a good thing, but the people that I train with says, no, you don't do that to people. So there's a right way to do it, to try to build people up and then provide all the raw materials so the body can detox itself. There are people that do that. They're probably much more skilled in it than I, but I don't do like aggressive cleanses other than putting good stuff in.
Yeah, I just don't know what I'd do. I mean, if I was diagnosed today, I've always thought surgery, once you give outside air to cancer, it's like gas on a fire. Actually,
it may not be the air as much as when you do surgery, by naturally all the body tissues that are wounded put out all these growth factors that are what stimulate the tumors. Why you may hear these stories of somebody had surgery and then, you know, 2 months later they were riddled with tumor, because there are these things called epidermal growth factor and a number of different factors that are released in the act of surgery, that if that tumor has the right mutations and that tumor is sensitive to those factors, it can cause it to literally explode.
Loaded question. Does chemo work?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it works. I think I think it can be applied much more intelligently than what they're doing. And it's not just me. There was even a specialist at Sloan Kettering in New York, in an article in Newsweek magazine a few years ago, who said they're still doing what he calls big dumb studies. They're not tailoring the chemo to the genetic mutations driving the tumor, which will determine what chemo they respond to. They're still doing, oh, you got breast, you get this, you get colon, you get this, you got ovary, you get that, rather than looking at the actual tumor. This is what, like I say, the folks in Ashland and some other folks are doing to more intelligently use the chemo. But there's times, I can tell you people certainly whose lives were saved.
What about direct application? I mean, you go to the tumor instead of the whole body.
To figure out a delivery system. And the problem is tumors by their nature are outgrowing their blood supply, so the middle of the tumor a lot of times is not going to get any blood. How do you get it in there? So I don't know enough about that to be able to tell you, but I do know that there are more intelligent ways of applying what we know from an integrative standpoint, supporting the body, using natural things that will actually keep the tumor more sensitive, and using the medical therapies themselves.
So I'm hearing you say, Dr. Klein, a key part to this is knowing your own metabolism, so to speak. I mean, you got to know.
Well, it's how well you've been taking care of yourself. I mean, if you've been smoking and eating an American diet for 40 years, don't expect miracles, and you're going to go to Europe and go diathermy treatments and do coffee enemas and do this and that. I would be kind of suspect that you're going to get somewhere with it. But so a lot of that has to do with how well have you taken care of it up to that point.
But cancer's no respecter of person.
we basically have to deal with it as it is, and try to make the best intelligent decisions we can given the information that we're given.
Well, thank you. Let me just say to our viewers and listeners, if you want more on this, you can get a hold of Dr. Klein, VentanaWellness.com, or you can call and make an appointment with him. But VentanaWellness.com is a good resource. Well, thank you.
My pleasure as always.
I'm amazed that we don't call cancer epidemic in this country. I don't know why we haven't declared it.
We declared war on it 40 years ago.
Yeah.
You see how far we've gotten.
Not very far.
Yeah.
It's actually gotten worse.
Right.
Yeah. All right. All right. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, are you a scientist and do you believe? Well, our next guest is exactly that. Delighted to have with us today Dr. L. He's the author of this book right here called Counting to Jesus, or Counting to God, excuse me, a personal journey through science to belief, and he is quite the gentleman. Grew up in Connecticut, graduated early from MIT where he double majored in math and physics. He then obtained a master's in theoretical mathematics from the University of Maryland, and he now has this book out, which is the story of his journey from science to faith. Douglas, nice to have you, my friend. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, quite interesting. Give us a little bit about your personal journey.
Well, I was an atheist in high school, and I was an atheist through college until my son was born in my early 30s. And my wife said we need to get him baptized. So I didn't figure that I needed the battle. So I said, okay. And it hit me when I went to church, there's something there. So I've spent 30 years trying to figure out whether science and God are compatible. And I think the answer is definitely yes. I lay it out in my book.
Wow. So you deal with the subject of intelligent design. And as a scientist, how did you come back on that?
Well, I started in cosmology, but, I had to teach myself molecular biology. And there is so much information hidden in all life, in the origin of life, and in every species. And the evidence is overwhelming. I mean, I'm not sure how to summarize it very quickly.
Well, how did you process through your brain? Because you're trained to think the other way, and I would assume in college you were given pretty much the evolutionary theory. So what clicked?
Right.
What was the one thing that began to head you in the another direction?
Well, I read this book, and I learned that the machine parts in our bodies called proteins are made by linking together amino acids. There's 20 of different kinds of those. And these machine parts are typically hundreds of amino acids long. Think of amino acids like a letter in a sentence or a paragraph. And I sat there literally on a plane, and I said, well, what are the odds of forming this by accident? So you take, at each place there's 20, then there's, say 300 places, 300 amino acids linked together. So you multiply 20 by itself 300 times, you get a number far beyond the ability of the universe to create by chance.
What do your colleagues think of you these days?
Well, we'll find out. I'm going up to MIT to give a talk launching my book in 2 days. So, I've got a number of scientists have endorsed my book, including the head of physics at MIT, for example.
Wow. What did he think of it, and why did he endorse it?
He thinks it's pretty thought-provoking, and he thinks everybody ought to be open to the wonder in the universe and in life. And that's all I asked was people to do, if they're inclined not to believe. Just, science is looking at the evidence and figuring it out for yourself. And I just asked people to follow the evidence.
Does academia still push evolution is primarily the source and the reason?
Well, you say evolution. I mean, the answer is yes, and by that they push Darwinian evolution, that it all happened by accident, and that's overwhelming. I mean, in most schools, other than some Christian colleges, you can't get tenure if you don't, sign up as a card-carrying member of the Darwinist Party.
You say that there's even some evidences today that would support, our science, I guess, today would support the existence of God. What do you mean by that?
Well, in my book, Counting to God, I count through 7 areas of science. Can I just give you a couple minutes summary?
Sure, yeah.
Well, number 1, the creation of the universe. I mean, that's proven scientific fact. People probably heard of the Big Bang Theory. And it all started with a Big Bang. All of matter and energy, time and space created in a single instant from absolute nothingness. That's count number 1. Count number 2, it's all very finely tuned to make life possible. I mean, one scientist has written, the precision like you threw a dart and hit a tiny bullseye at the other end of the universe. It's actually finer than that mathematically. It's stunning. I mean, all the things that have to exist. Count number 3, the origin of life. A Yale physicist has estimated the odds of life arising by chance as 1 in 10 to the 100 billion. I mean, impossible. Count number 4, the technology of life that arose 3.5 billion years ago, more sophisticated than anything humans have ever created. Count number 5, new species. That's what everybody focuses on, but every species has new information in it. And there's so much more. The fossil record contradicts theories of gradual descent. There's a book, Darwin's Doubt, on that. Count 6 is the special qualities of Earth, probably the best planet for life in our entire galaxy, if you look at all the factors. And count 7, and this is getting, forgive me, a little complex in advance, but quantum physics destroys material views of the universe. I mean, quantum entanglement, I can explain that if you want. I mean, it proves there's something outside of space and time, that particles are connected faster than the speed of light.
What did you do after your conversion, if I can say that? What did you do with the book of Genesis?
Well, the book of Genesis makes some scientific claims. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so I looked at the scientific parts of the book of Genesis, and I found them strongly supported.
That's got to be a real conflict with some of your scholar colleagues.
Oh, it's a huge conflict. I mean, some of them, I mean, I've heard quotes to the effect that, anybody who doesn't believe in Darwinian evolution is I think it's crazy and stupid or insane.
Yeah, right.
And there's all this nonsense out there. What I'm going to MIT for is to ask for open mind.
Good for you.
People will look at the evidence.
When is that? When are you doing that, Douglas?
I'm doing that Wednesday, 1 o'clock. This is my mission. Other people go to Africa, and I commend them on that, but this is my mission in life. And it's going to be available. The video will be available on our website, countingtogod.com. I can't give you a date for that, but it'll be out there.
I'd like to have you back after the experience, just see how you did.
Yeah.
What do you do with the flood? And you mentioned that the aging of the Earth. I mean, if you go to the Grand Canyon, how do you look at it now with all the layers?
Well, everything in my book is, I think, neutral to this issue of the age of the Earth. Although personally, I'm an old Earth person, but it doesn't matter whether, to me, the scientific evidence for God. So.
How has this changed your life?
It has dramatically intensified my faith. Until I found out through science you know, I'm an MIT grad, so I had to do it the MIT science and math way to get to God. I mean, I commend other people who can look at the philosophical arguments, the historical evidence, and so much more. I had to do science and math, and I have found a mathematical road to the existence of God.
It's amazing. And your mission now, you feel like to go back into academia and stand on your faith.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I've got to get the word out. I think so many people, I mean, very smart people in today's society are intellectually persecuted.
Right.
Wow. You know, they want to believe, but they think, they hear all this nonsense all the time that science is contrary to God. And, you know, I want to help those people out. I want to help them with their faith.
Good for you. I've always said whatever God saves you from or brings you through, he turns you around and makes you a minister too.
Yeah.
And that certainly is the case. Do you think that there is openness in academia for a guy like you?
I think so. And don't get me wrong, it's going to be a tough sell. But there are hundreds of scientists who have signed, for example, this Descent from Darwin list. And it would be thousands if it weren't that, you know, many of them would get fired from their jobs for signing. So, you know, and I think it's great of an institution like MIT. I mean, it doesn't have to be accused of being a bad scientific institution. I mean, they can be open to the truth.
Wow. What did you think of the movie Expelled?
Very powerful. It was.
Did that help you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's so much out there like that that is very, very helpful.
Wow. Well, listen, I'm fascinated by this. I'm just so pleased that the Lord's called you back into this, because you can be a gentle giant in the midst of all of that. And commend you on your book. And let's talk when you get done with with your home going to MIT, just to see how you weathered the storm there. But you never know. You know, if you convert one or two, the mission's been well worth it.
Absolutely. You know, I put the word out there, and now it's up to God to help me spread it. But and any one person that I can help with their faith, I mean, that would make the book a success in my view.
Oh, I really enjoy your spirit. That's wonderful. We'll be praying for you, and let's talk on the other side of your experience, okay?
I love that. Thank you very much.
All right, the book is called Counting to God, A Personal Journey Through Science to Belief. Douglas L. Get a copy of it. There's a picture of it on the screen. Check it out at the bookstores. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and our special guest is Cheryl Chumley. Maybe you have seen or read some of her material. She's a full-time writer with the Washington Times, and she writes about politics and government, a variety of newspapers as well, internet news sites, think tanks, and she's the author of a new book called Police State USA. Whoa. Cheryl, nice to have you with us. What a delight and an honor. Boy, this is a heavy topic. What made you take this on?
Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate being here. It's an honor. As far as why I wanted to write Police State USA, I'm a mom with 4 kids. I love my country. I follow news on a regular basis and have for years. And I'm just really concerned about the direction this country is headed.
I think we all are, and we're kind of waking up to the fact that government's gotten very big, very intrusive, and big brothers everywhere, and we're becoming uncomfortable with it. But we really don't know what to do about it.
It is a little overwhelming how to fight, how to return this country to its constitutional roots. My biggest message is that Americans should not give up. As long as we have breath, as long as we are alive, we should still wage the battle, because what greater battle is there than to fight for one's country?
No question about it. Do you believe we are in a police state now?
Pretty much. If you read through the topics I've covered in my book, you can see easily that we're being attacked by government encroachments at all levels, at every angle. And it's way more than just the obvious. It's way more than just the NSA and Edward Snowden. It's our local police departments, it's our schools, it's even homeowners associations, which aren't really government entities, but they are quasi-government entities, and they indicate a shift in mindset of America.
You know what alarms me, Cheryl, is that it feels that some of these sub-agencies outside of the police force itself has powers to enforce their laws or their rules or their policies, and you talk about it. Of course, we have cameras and phone tapping and all of these other things, but it seems like some of these civil service agencies or human health agencies have more power than we possibly think they have.
Well, look at where that comes from. We have the White House and the First Lady, who is not even an elected official. We have her stepping in and filling what is supposed to be a legislative role and putting out basically a demand to American schools what children should be eating. It started with her desire for a healthier America, which is a great goal. But once you start stepping overboard and taking on responsibilities and duties of duly elected lawmakers and basically forcing the government at local school levels to abide your wish list for eating, that's where we should draw the line and put our foot down.
This is a tough question, but do you think we are heading towards some kind of an insurrection?
I definitely look at what's going on in America, as we all should, of Judeo-Christian faith, that this is a battle of principalities. It's not a battle of, politicians with R next to their name versus D next to their names. So in that respect, the Bible's pretty clear about where our path is headed. On the other hand, I do think that Americans have a lot of actions they can take to turn back the clock, and our biggest fight is to reclaim our core greatest asset, that we are a nation founded on the view that our rights come from God and not government.
So therefore, the onus of this really falls on the faith community to begin to petition heaven, because it is a spiritual battle more than it is anything else. Well,
prayer is not something to be tossed off as just a lighthearted action. Prayer actually works. And, our founding fathers were humble when they founded this nation and they forged our guiding government documents. They constantly, time after time, turned to a higher power, turned to God in heaven, and asked for help and intervention. And there's been historical books that record how those prayers have been answered. So I think even though we're a modern society, hundreds of years away, down the path of when we were founded, we can take that as a good example of how we should guide our lives.
Cheryl, we've seen some borderline issues with this police state. One was the Bundy case in Nevada. I mean, that really got right to the edge of outright. I mean, that could have really gotten out of control in a very bad way. But it appears that America is beginning to push back. You just kind of wonder where this is going.
Well, sometimes it takes big dramatic events to wake people up to the realities. And I agree, the Nevada instance with Klein Bundy, in an armed standoff with federal agents, that you can remember federal agents are servants of the people. They are our employees. And the big issue there, when it gets down to the root of it, is that Klein Bundy didn't pay a bill. So when people look at what happened in Nevada and they fear that the same thing could happen in their own communities, I say they're absolutely right. And I do document in my book several instances where similar type dramas have occurred.
Wow. Do you talk about how the media influences this?
I do. I have a whole chapter devoted to the media, and as a member of the media, I've seen firsthand, in newsrooms how bias occurs. I've been the victim of, a firing at least once because my reporting was a little too conservative or traditional. It countered with what the publisher wanted. So I speak from my own personal experiences, and I also speak from, a news watcher who follows events, and I get my news from a variety of sources. So it's pretty easy to tell when the media is being biased and in favor of the government as opposed to representing and watchdogging for the people.
In today's world, we've seen the rise and fall of socialism and communism alike, and yet there is an element in our country that really feels this is the path we need to go down, and it seems so obviously in contrast to how we were founded and what we believe in and what we stand for. So that this conflict is very, very real. Therefore, it does become spiritual. It is a spiritual issue, and are we going to reclaim it as Americans is yet to be seen. I don't know. What do you say to overcome this?
Well, first off, realize where the threats are coming from. People have to be educated, and they also have to educate their kids because the school systems aren't going to do it. You can read on a daily basis the horrific teachings that go on in our school systems, in our public schools across the nation on a daily basis. So parents have to step in and teach their kids the true founding of this nation, the true and accurate history, teach them the Constitution. I think, church attendance is great, prayer is great, and I do think that Americans can stop, for instance, giving money to the major political parties and instead give their donations to those nonprofits and watchdog type groups that will do the real work to fight for America on Capitol Hill.
Well, that's beautifully said, because I think we're now seeing that there's generations out there that were never taught the Holocaust. Therefore, they don't even believe it exists or it happened. It was a myth.
And if you look at the history, our next generation of children aren't going to realize the biggest, strength of America. Our rights are rooted from God, not from government. And once you lose that, it just opens the door to more and more government encroachments.
Do you have hope for America?
Definitely. America was founded on God's grace and blessings. And, I read the Bible. God uses negative things to wake his people up, and I think that's where we're at right now. I happen to think that the Obama administration is one of the most corrupt, secretive administrations, no matter how much it tries to put itself forward as transparent and out for the benefit of America. And I just think that you can use this information we've seen the last few years under our federal administration and take it and dig in and fight harder. Of course we have hope.
That's wonderful. Well said. Well, let me encourage you to get a copy of the book, and it's called Police State USA. There's a picture of it there on the screen. You may want to check it out. And thank you, Cheryl, for what you do. Thank you for the stand that you take. And stay vigilant. And the best to you on this book. And let's hook up again sometime soon, okay?
Hey, thank you. I would love that.
Okay, have a great day. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.